Never has Royal Ascot been so enlivened by international participation, at least not for a decade, at least not since Black Caviar ran and won famously in 2012. These are the declarations for the King's Stand Stakes on Tuesday. Amongst them are the United States star Golden Pal, the team captain for Wesley Ward's Royal Ascot squad, and Nature Strip, jointly the second highest rated horse anywhere on the planet, who comes from stall 10. And it's a first visit for many years to Royal Ascot for Australian, I think I'm safe to say, legend, Chris Waller, 125 Group or Grade 1 races and counting, trainer of the Great Winks and Very Elegant, joins me now in the studio. Chris, great to welcome you here.
Absolute pleasure to be here, simple as that.
And how are you enjoying this week, this preparation, this build-up to Royal Ascot, which we've all been rather excited about for some time?
It's been fantastic. We're staying with Charlie Hills at Lambourne, and his team have done a great job to look after us, and it's horse heaven, as what we would say from Australia or New Zealand, where I'm actually from. The horses come first. The cars stop when the horses cross the road. The vast open spaces, and you can just see it in the horses. They're relaxed. The staff relaxed. I'm relaxed, and we've got a couple of nice horses that we've brought to entertain.
And there'll be some who will be saying, "Come on, Waller, what took you so long?" What took you so long?
Well, it's not an easy step. It's we're in awe of racing in Europe, in the Northern Hemisphere, and we watch it each Saturday night when the big races are on, or the Ascot Week, the Derby, you name it. We watch it, we're glued to it. We know you need to bring a pretty good horse to beat the locals, and you've got this week so many horses from around the world coming to take on each other. So you need to bring the right horse, because it's a long way to come. Because you've got to go home as well. It takes a while for the horses to acclimatise here and then come back into an Australian winter when we've got big racing 52 weeks of the year. So you've got to bring the right horses, and I think we've chosen well.
Okay, I want to talk about Nature Strip and Home Affairs a little later on, and doubtless we'll talk a lot about Winks, but I want to dial it right the way back, because I don't know much about where it all began for you in New Zealand, and you made the point there. I'm from New Zealand. How heavily do you wear the fact that you're a Kiwi in Australia?
Well, Australia's home. Australia's been so good to me, and of my family. I've got 2 Australian kids, and obviously a New Zealand wife, but the kids were born in Australia, so Australia's home for us.
And do they think of themselves as Australian?
Very much so.
Do they?
Yeah, very much so. So we're lucky to be where we are. I had a good upbringing on a dairy farm in New Zealand. My parents used to go to the races once a month as race goers. My grandparents were hobby breeders, just with a few horses, and the passion grew. And just like a couple of your guests before, I was a racing enthusiast and still am, and respect the heritage and the tradition before me. And it makes it a very rewarding sport when you have that love for an industry, love for the horse or animals, and from the dairy farm, the animal side of things came in, and it's worked well. So
you had that natural empathy as a stockman, someone who understood dealing with animals.
It didn't appear that at the time, but when you look back on it now, it was just a great upbringing, working with animals, and understanding when a cow's sick or an animal around the farm's not well, what you do to help it get back to full health, and the things that go with it along the way, which are not always good on a farm, but it was a very special upbringing.
Tell me a bit more about your parents.
Well, my dad was a dairy farmer, Mum was a school teacher. Very supportive, and I lived in a local town, probably similar to Lambourne, which is where we're staying at the moment, a small town called Foxton. There was a few horse trainers, and I went to work with one of them, and he used to travel a few horses to Australia, so I got the chance to travel, and I thought, this is good, I've made it. I've taken a horse to Australia and led it around as a strapper, as we call them back home, and I thought this was good, and you got to see those great trainers, see the great jockeys, and it was pretty special. And then eventually got the opportunity to train myself, and it's been an amazing ride from that point on.
And it's actually been a pretty brisk ride as well. I mean, you only started training, in 96, 97, that sort of time?
A while ago now.
Yeah, but it really, it doesn't...
Yeah. I was looking at one of your previous shows, and I think it was Tom Dascombe said he'd been training or in the industry for 30 years, and I got my fingers out, and I actually realised I needed 30 fingers. I've been in the industry for quite a while, so training in Australia since 2000. I was 3 years in New Zealand before that, and we had our first Group 1 winner in 2008, and since then it's taken off.
What would you was that the point where everything turned? Having that Group 1 winner, people recognising you could do the job.
Yeah, it was, and I watch a few of the English trainers and how there's the emerging trainers coming through, and like this year you had a gentleman trainers, a Guineas winner.
George Bowie,
Yeah, and it's just amazing and how much confidence that'll give him. That was the turning point for me. It was just having that inner confidence to know that you didn't need to change anymore what you were doing. You didn't have to try and work the horses harder. You just had to wait for the right horses to come along. When the right horses come along, they make everything look pretty easy.
Some people are by nature just very ballsy people, aren't they? It doesn't strike me that you feel you are necessarily like that. Were you a little bit more timid before you'd had that success?
Yeah, very, very timid, shy, not quite, didn't have the confidence probably to think that I could do the job at that elite level. We were training a lot of winners, but and you hear people talking, say, oh, he hasn't trained a good winner yet, and things like that. So you can't do anything about it. You can't change it. That's the beauty of horse racing. You never know what to expect, and I say you never walk home from the races thinking you own it, because you just don't know what's around the corner either.
And it wasn't that long between training that first Grade 1 winner, first Group 1 winner, to being part of what very few people will ever get to experience, a phenomenon in Winx and that story and that journey. Can you remember when you first thought this was something more than just training a good racehorse?
Her second Group 1, she took a while to win her first Group 1, and she was beaten more often than she won in the first part of her career. She won her first 3 starts, I think, from memory, and then she might have only won one of the next sort of 5 or 6. We sent her up to Queensland, which is winter time in the 3-year-old year, and it's not regarded as our strongest racing, but it's still good racing. And we took her up there to win a Group 1 race. I guess it would be similar to, instead of taking on the English Derby or the English Oaks, you go elsewhere to another country, and that's what we did with her. And then she had a break. She returned as a 4-year-old and won a Group 1 race over a mile and almost fell that day. And yeah, that to me showed me that she had that bit of extra quality, and the winning sequence had begun then. It was her 3rd or 4th win, and the next win was a Cox Plate, and that was when it really started to get exciting. Yes, I think she won every race for 4 years along those lines. The pressure started to build along the way, and it was an amazing ride, and she was a very good horse.
You talk about the pressure, and you've spoken quite a lot about it. That sense of responsibility for a horse that everybody who was interested in horse racing in Australia and around the world felt they owned a part of. How did you deal with that?
It was interesting. We weren't obviously not trained to be media people. We're not trained to deal with these situations. But I guess it wasn't just a matter of it happening over a month. As I said, it was a 4-year journey, and we learnt and felt our way through it. And we soon learned that she became everybody else's property. And we had the responsibility of informing everybody, and you name it. It was an amazing ride, and to get it right, like when you're winning sort of 33 odd races, however many she won in a row, it's 33 trips to the races, it's 33 final gallops, it's 33 media mornings, it's 33 recoveries, it's just one after another. Yeah, and it was a huge relief when she retired. She won a final race, which was the Queen Elizabeth, and by that stage she was getting recognised from all fields, not just sporting fields, but she was on the front and back pages of every newspaper in Australia, and obviously capturing the imagination from around the world as well.
That longevity is remarkable. We've seen brilliantly talented racehorses, but to keep delivering metronomically, and particularly for a mare as well.
Yeah. Well, how that happened was obviously she was a very sound horse. She never had any leg problems, and we used to space her races quite well. She got I think she used to race 7 times, maybe 8 times in a 12-month calendar. So it worked out pretty well in the end, where a lot of her wins were that easy. She wasn't really being tested, so she would recover better, she'd get confidence, and it takes a very special horse to do it, and she made us look pretty good.
And that, of course, prompted so much debate here, which I enjoyed, I don't know. And the narrative was, well, she's beating up a load of rubbish in Australia. You wait why don't you bring her here and take on some good horses of ours, and we'll show her what she needs to be made of.
I fully respect that, and we would have loved to have brought her over for a race like the Queen Anne. But as you can see on that shot, she was so well received in Australia, and that was every race start, and we almost had a duty to keep doing that. Like it was a big deal in Australia. She was on the back of Black Caviar, who did similar things, and that photo, that picture there, is a pretty good example of how racing in Australia is going at the moment. And you could ask, okay, if we're coming to Ascot, why aren't we going to Dubai? Why aren't we going to Hong Kong? Why aren't we going to America? It would always be something that we couldn't quite fulfill when people want you to do things. So I would have loved it to come here with the owners and everyone the same, but there was that obligation to keep it going. And as I touched on about the other horses, bringing them over here is one thing. They're coming out, so our horses are in winter now, and we've put them on a plane. It took 40 hours door to door. They end up, and it's summer here in England, and the sun's going down at like 11 o'clock at night just about, and getting up at 4 in the morning. Like, it's a big deal for horses, especially mares, and when she's expected to come back to Australia and do it all in reverse, like, there's going to be a problem. They are athletes, but they're animals, and we respected that part of it.
I mean, you talk about the strength of Australian racing at the moment, and we used to speak to various different members of the Winx conglomerate of owners, and you've trained for huge syndicates. Getting all these people when they've got a horse like that, or Very Elegant, who's just gone from you to Francis Graffard, getting them all to agree about something must be part of the challenge of a job. How do you manage that side of it?
Well, it's I guess, I put all my cards on the table and spell things out best I can. And if you inform people well, and that's what I think the Australian trainers do very well, is we've had to learn that, we need to get out there a bit more and allow people to see what we're doing, whether it be owners, whether it be punters, whether it be anybody. People want so much information now. So getting that information out there and trying to advise them best you can, I think, is the key. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong.
Very Elegant will always be very special to you because she won you your Melbourne Cup.
Yes.
And no matter what else you go on to achieve in your career, if you didn't have that on your CV, how painful would that have been? A horse trainer would never admit that he is going to worry too much, or she's going to worry too much about winning a big race. But you could admit it here.
It was pretty special. So it was a great moment, and an amazing horse. She'd been Australian Horse of the Year prior. And the Melbourne Cup's a handicap, so the bigger the race they win, the more weight they carry, and I think she'd won 10 Group 1s prior to this, and never, she's just never been so dominant over the 2,400 metre to 2 mile journey. So that's when the Arc de Triomphe discussions started, and she's an amazing athlete, and if they can get her right here, in her best possible condition, she will be very competitive.
Really? You genuinely believe she can hold it to the best Europeans?
Well, I know how hard it'll be. I know how and she's not in form at the moment, but we had the wettest ever year or autumn in Sydney, and it just blew all their form out of the way, so I'm sure she can bounce back. And I think it's great that they've brought her over here for a proper preparation. I think a fleeting visit wouldn't have worked. And I actually said to the owners, I can't get her ready for an Arc. She'd have to be prepared here. I said we could bring her towards the end. I think it was Champions Day, there's a 2400 metre race which would have been perfect for her, I would have been happy to bring her for that. But yeah, to prepare her properly, she needed to be here, and it's been great to see her settle in so well, and she's pretty good.
Is there a bit of it that's a bit painful?
To
see her with somebody else's name on the licence?
Not at all. That's honest. That's the honest truth. Because I want the best for the horse, and the owners wanted that opportunity. And once they make that decision, you've got to do the best you can to support them. So I'll support them all the way through and help them with the horse, and yeah, try and give them the best advice. And it looks like she's settled in really well.
It's quite something, isn't it, to have one folk heroine in Winx, and Very Elegant was starting to chisel her way into people's hearts.
Yeah, she certainly was. Yeah, and that Melbourne Cup, I think until you really win one of those big races, you know how important they are. But when we were lucky enough to win it this year, or last year now in the calendar terms, it really was significant. And yeah, she'll certainly hold a fond place in my heart.
Because, of course, for all we beat our chest about how great our horses are in Europe, we might be hanging on to that mantle slightly tenuously.
Yeah,
if you keep going the way you're going.
Look, I think no matter where you are in the world, horses are horses. I think Australia is capable of getting the best stayer, best 2400 metre horse in the world, but it's not going to happen very often. And likewise with the English and Irish sprinters, you're going to have the best horses in the world, and your races allow those ratings to happen, but it's not going to be as frequent because you don't breed or don't train that type of horse, whereas us in Australia don't breed the middle distance horses as well. So I think the best way to look at it is respecting each country, each hemisphere for what they do best. And up in the Northern Hemisphere, the way you prepare your milers and 2,000 metre horses and further, it's just quite remarkable. And
in what way?
Just the way, I think it's a long and more gentle approach. Those beautiful uphill gallops. We don't have an uphill gallop in Sydney. In fact, you'll be well aware of Gay Waterhouse, and I've discussed it with her many a times. Do we need the facilities like they've got in England and Ireland as an example? She said, oh no, it won't work here. It doesn't work here for our racing. So,
are you sceptical? Do you think it could work?
Oh, I think it could. It's a great way to train, and just seeing Charlie Hills and how his operation works, he's relaxed, and it's a great flow-on effect. It's a healthy environment. So there's so many good things up here, and I've heard you touch on a few other things that need improving, which hopefully will come together, and the prize money aspect needs to improve. But
because you've got such a flourishing industry in Australia, or in most states in Australia, that should enable the industry to flourish the way you want it to.
Yeah, it does. It does. There's great support. It's a great, especially through COVID. I think it was the only sport going for about 6 to 8 weeks there, and we really stood tall. There's so many challenges in racing, from animal welfare to there's endless amount of things that every sport, every business goes through, and they're dealing with it well and responsibly, because the people watching at home want to see a responsible sport. They want to see longevity, and we've got to respect where we come from and what the people have done before us, because it's our job now to lift racing and make sure it continues for another 200 plus years.
Do you like the idea of making the international sport grow? Do you like the idea of making the world a smaller place?
Yeah, I do. I think it's great. Harder with a horse though, but yeah, getting good horses together in one venue is fantastic, and the match races and talking up the events, whether it be Golden Pal from America and Nature Strip from Australia, and obviously English, Irish, French horses all coming together in 1 week is fantastic, and your location allows that. But yeah, the positivity and good media in any sport is so important, and get rid of the bad stories and get everybody working as one, and that's where we're lucky in Australia. We've got whether it's the government in power or the opposition, our racing bodies work with them to try and get the best together, and we get some tax relief, tax help from the government, and it's an important thing considering the wagering turnover and how long it's been going for so many years.
And you got this competition, and sometimes it's kind of quite a bit of needle between Victoria and New South Wales. Do you think that's quite healthy or not?
Well, it's an interesting argument, because where's all the money coming from? Obviously, there's money there, and they keep finding it. As I said, they are getting some tax incentives from the governments because wagering turnover is good. But I think it can only happen if you've got one or two people making the decisions, not 100 people making the decisions. And to cut a long story short, in New South Wales, where I'm from, they just stripped everything to the bone probably 15 years ago, and they got the costs down. The two clubs in Sydney, the ATC and the Sydney Turf Club, merged. The government gave them $140 million to do so. They spent money on the facilities for the public to use, equally the public and members. And there was one club making the decision, and there was no arguing, no bickering. There was one decision, and if that decision didn't get made right, it was their
somebody was accountable for it.
Exactly. So it's created good competition in terms of state rivalry now as well. So every time Sydney puts their prize money up, Melbourne has to do it. And 52 weeks of the year, we're running for very good prize money. It's just about to go to 150,000 every race in Sydney. Victoria will match it in Melbourne, and then you've got all these pop-up races. So, yeah, the Golden Eagle's worth $10 million. It's for 4-year-olds. It's run on the same day as the Derby in Victoria, which creates huge debate. But it's all done because of turnover, and people gamble on those certain days, and whether it be at York or whether it be at Ascot or a twilight meeting in a remote area, people do invest on those days. So that's the sport we're in. That's one side of it, and the animals are the other side, which is what I work with.
How do you feel as the chief flag flyer for Australia at a meeting like Royal Ascot? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's very proud, extremely proud. Simple as that.
And New Zealand, of course.
Yeah. So, but it all comes down to results. But all I can do is prepare the horses to the best of my ability, and we've got two really nice horses. Home Affairs, who's an exciting colt. He'll run on the last day, and Nature Strip, as you've touched on, is an amazing sprinter. And, it makes me very proud, but I know it's important to have them right on the day. So if we could hear the Australian or New Zealand national anthem post-race, it would be pretty special.
It's funny, isn't it? Because normally we compete in sporting events, and all we want is for you to lose and to hear God Save the Queen playing after the race. Is it quite a curious phenomenon that there's actually quite a lot of people who want to hear, your national anthem? Yeah,
well, I guess it would be. As you say, the world's becoming a smaller place. We're all together now, and I think the Australian rugby team's the English rugby team's got an Australian coach, and the cricketers have got a New Zealand coach.
Exactly.
Looks to be doing a good job.
Yeah, well, I don't know how he's doing this morning, do you? It wasn't going so well yesterday by the look when New Zealand were racking up 500
or
whatever it was.
Yeah, I think they closed okay.
Okay. As far as Nature Strip's concerned, I was talking on my podcast earlier this week to Jason Richardson from Channel 7, and he said, mate, the others may as well start now. This horse just wins. He just wins. Will you join in his bombast or not?
No, not at all. Look, I think you've got to respect 1,000 metres will be like the 100-metre sprint at the Olympics. I think we saw the declarations before. It was 18 or so. There won't be a big distance between first and last, and well, hopefully there is, but
well, listen. You and I both know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
But we know that Golden Pal is going to go very, very fast. Yeah. But it's a question of whether he can stretch it up the hill.
That's right, and it's the same for our horse too. We've been beaten over 1,000 metres when we've gone too fast. It's a long way. It might not sound far, but it's a tough 1,000-metre distance with a slight undulating of the track and a steady rise at certain parts as well. So. Yeah, and the atmosphere of Royal Ascot is one thing as well. So I think there could be a few undercards there just happy to be under the radar, ready to pounce.
Do you ever, and have you ever gone to the races thinking, I'd just win today. I'd just win this.
Yeah, a long time ago, and you come off second best pretty quick. And even with Winks, I just never used to think about it. Just concentrate on the horse, make sure that you've done the best you can, because they do the talking. And the more you complicate things and the more you build things up, the harder you fall. It's as simple as that. It's a long way home from Ascot if you get beat.
I mean, the difference with Winx and this horse is this horse gets beaten fairly regularly.
Yes. Yep.
It doesn't make him not a champion.
No.
Is it because routinely winning races over 1,000 and 1,200 metres is actually a bit more difficult?
Very much so, and I think that's a good example of how you've got to respect the distance. You've got to have it right. He can't just breeze up the straight and say, right, I'm going to catch the leaders on the line. He needs to put a bit of pressure on them as well, because if you go too slow, the leaders keep running. So it's a fine line in any race, especially sprint races, and lucky to have a good jockey that knows the horse well. And James McDonald, he's a real star. He rode here for a short while in the UK, but he really is a star, and he's a big asset to us.
I'll come back to him in just a moment. I just want to have a look at the start of the Lightning Stakes and Nature Strip. Just have a little look for those who haven't seen it. I'm sure, Chris, you've seen this piece of footage about 4,000 times and mused over it. If something like that happened at Ascot, would that be game over for him?
Well, that was Home Affairs in front of him, and that was arguably Nature Strip's best run. He just got beat. He got beat a nose by Home Affairs. But it showed that he actually doesn't have to charge. In his early racing, he really did charge. And it was catch me you can type tactics. Now he can actually sit off them and still be as strong on the line. So that's what we'll be counting on Tuesday with that tough straight. So that showed that there's another string to his bow.
How was that for you in the aftermath? A horse that you must absolutely love, Nature Strip. In terms of Hart, must have been.
It
was Hart with Nature Strip in the last furlong, even though you train both of them?
Yeah, for sure. I don't take sides. It's as simple as that. But the older horses always have that special place. Yeah. The colt that won the race, it was probably the making of his stallion career. He'd already won a stallion-making race early on.
So commercially, for your relationship with Coolmore, that's massive.
It's one of their. It's a huge feat for Home Affairs. But yeah, it was tough because I've got to be equally responsible for both owners. And yeah, the Nature Strip owners were flat. They were devastated. And but they saw a few days later how great the performance actually was. So hopefully they can both get their spoils this week.
Are you going into the same problem potentially on Saturday in the Platinum Jubilee? If Nature Strip comes through Tuesday okay and runs great or wins, you're going to wheel him back round for Saturday and then take on Home Affairs? We're
aware that the race is there. It's as simple as that. He's got a job to do back at home, and we've got to see how much he puts into Tuesday's race and how much it takes out of him first, because he'll be going back to defend his title in the Everest in October, and it's a $15 million race. So we want to make sure there's something left in the locker when we go back to Australia. We don't want to leave it all here at Ascot, and it's going to be tough racing.
You've got your answers ready for Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, haven't you?
Hopefully I'm in that position to do so.
I mean, is it contingent on if he wins? Is that the point? You'd only consider running him Saturday if he won Tuesday?
They'd have to run very well. If he didn't win, he'd have to be very unlucky or some reason like that. Maybe it's a luck reason. If we didn't break well and things didn't work out and the owners said, well, gee, we've come all this way, we didn't get a fair crack at them on Tuesday, can we have another go Saturday? But yeah, we'll just play a straight bat. We'll let everybody know what's going on at the same time, and hopefully the decision can be made.
So at this stage, James McDonald will ride Nature Strip on Tuesday and he'll ride Home Affairs on Saturday. And if you did run Nature Strip Saturday, then Jamie Carr would come in for the ride on him Saturday.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that's how much I've got into it. I don't even know if Jamie's here. She was coming at one stage, and she rode the horse in a piece of work prior to getting on the plane. She's won a Group 1 on him and did run second on him on that day too. So she knows him very well.
But you'd be happy with that if
I'm happy with any good jockey over here. There's some good jockeys, Nick.
So tell me why you think James McDonald is so good. I mean, a lot of us think he's right up there, maybe even the best in the world If not, then he's certainly up in the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, well, he's so young still, and he's well ahead of his age in terms of jockeys. I believe jockeys would mature well into their 30s, and then they hold that great level for so long. So he's still getting to that stage of life, and he's a great horseman. He's got a great work ethic. He's meticulous with his form. He's such a fierce competitor. He's very strong, and the horses like him. They really do run for him.
And Jamie Kah has been a sensation, really, in the last year and a half. What sets her apart, do you think?
It's very similar. She gets the best out of a horse. They seem to keep running for her. She's not an aggressive rider by my terms of how I would assess a rider, and she just treats her horses very kindly, and they really respond for her. So that's been unique. She's great at positioning them, and the crowds and punters love her. So there's a reason for that. She wins lots of races, and she's a great ambassador to racing. And yeah, if you get a chance to see her over here, you'll be pretty impressed.
What I'm really interested in is how you, as someone who has amassed 125 plus Grade 1 races in a fairly short space of time, manages to appear so measured. Is it all going on inside, and this is just what we see on the exterior?
No, I do put a lot into it and give things plenty of thought, and I don't get too far ahead of myself, as I've continued to say. So I don't expect huge accolades or anything like that. I've got a great team. That's why I'm good. It's as simple as that. I respect that. I respect the team. Because without all those boys and girls working tirelessly at the stables, I wouldn't be here with this opportunity today, and I wouldn't have trained those winners, and it would stop pretty quick if I upset them and didn't treat them right. So, yeah, we work as a team, and you'll see me after a race get quite emotional. It's basically because of the team.
Because of those people who put so much graft into getting those horses.
I was one of them. I'm a strapper. I started from the bottom and worked my way through, and I've had so many opportunities along the way that I've taken with both hands. And it's been good this last week just to get around and hose a horse, which I wouldn't have done for probably 4 or 5 years, or help saddle a horse up at track work. I do it race day, but in track work, and I cleaned a couple of boxes yesterday on a Saturday afternoon, where I'd never ever do that before. I'm saddling up 20 horses, and it's just good to be able to get back and work with the team. And they're having a great opportunity as well. We took 2 boys to Ascot through the week. They rode the horses up the straight, and it was just a highlight for them. And you can just see on their faces they appreciate it, and they appreciate working with nice horses. And it's good to be able to provide that opportunity to young people.
You feel it's important to take your time to sort of fill yourself with the joy of the sport when you can, and not to take it.
Yeah,
I get the sense you take nothing for granted.
No, definitely not. I enjoy getting up in the morning. I enjoy watching them work and their track work, and their recoveries, and the race planning, and I respect every aspect of racing.
And that's because you've had clearly the upbringing that's got you so centred in a sport that is so highly adrenalised so often.
Yeah, it is. The emotions of winning and losing, and everything in between. It's high, and I guess controlling that emotion is important as well. You don't want to build your team up to say, well, we're going to have the best day ever today, and you come home with no winners, or likewise with the owners or the punters. You tell all the punters that your horses are going to win. Monday's paper doesn't read too well, or social media. So we just try and, as I said before, we try and keep a straight bat, give information, and try and take the highs and lows out of the sport.
And who guides you? Who picks you up?
My wife keeps me on the ground. That's for sure, Stephanie. So I don't need picking up. I know that in my position, there's always something to look forward to, and whether it be this Saturday, next season, the 2-year-olds coming through, there's so much to look forward to.
And is Stephanie with you for Ascot Week?
No, she's stayed at home with the kids. They're in a new school, and we've also got family that we think's important as well too. So it's not just about the the celebrations that come with this great racing, we've still got grassroots and family.
And is there a Waller racing dynasty to follow?
Bit young yet. My daughter, she's very keen on the horses. She's 9 and my son's 12, so no pressure there. I don't know if I really need them to go through what the sacrifices we make, but they can make that decision when the time's right.
But you'd be happy for them to make that decision?
I'd be happy for them to find a nice job, 9 to 5 and 5 days a week.
For the moment, Chris Waller, thanks so much.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
More from Chris in a few moments' time.